Welcome to MacStories Unwind, a weekly review of everything MacStories and more. Today's show is brought to you by Hook. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John Voorhees. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Here we are on another Friday going through all the happenings on MacStories, App Stories, and everything else. Plus, we have picks. And I understand you have a pick, but I'm going to keep people in anticipation of your pick because you didn't have one last week. But I'm glad that you found some time to relax and unwind a little bit.
I needed that because I've been busy writing this week, and so I felt like I needed a little break at night just before bed. So yeah, I have a fun pick. We're gonna talk about that in a few minutes. John, tell me. So I feel like I know nothing about this new trailer for Alto's Odyssey, Lost City. So what is Lost City?
All right. So as you may recall, Alto's Odyssey came out in early 2018, and you, Federico Vitici, wrote the review on MacStories.
Yes.
It was a very good review. Very good review. Still one of my favorites of yours because I think you really captured that game really well. Alto's Odyssey Lost City adds new content to the game. And it's not like these are levels necessarily or, your traditional DLC type thing. This is more of what they describe as a special edition because it's sprinkled throughout the game as I understand it. Now, I haven't had a chance to play this yet. That's a thing with Apple Arcade. They don't do betas or that kind of, pre-release press copies, something that's a sticking point with me that we can maybe talk about in more depth sometime. But this trailer gives us all a little bit more of a glimpse of what this Lost City is all about. And, from the trailer, it looks as though this is a kind of, as you would expect, kind of an ancient city that's hidden somewhere deep in this landscape that Alto is cruising through on his sandboard. And it looks really cool. And I just, that game is one of my all-time favorite iOS games. And I expect that this will be just as good. And I think it'll be a nice way for fans who already played through the game a lot to have something new to try and for new people to discover it. And it's an exclusive to Apple Arcade. So that's where it'll be debuting on the 16th, which is next Friday.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And it looks like you will be able to import your save data from Alto's Odyssey into the Lost City.
That's right.
That's very cool. So if you played the game a few years ago, now you can pick up so this would be like an extended edition for Apple Arcade, right?
Exactly.
Now, yeah, I love the atmosphere of this Lost City from the trailer. So I'm really keen to see this. And I kind of like how we're seeing more and more these days, whether it's because of Apple Arcade or the PS5. We're seeing these director's cut or like definitive editions of many, many games, which I think is a really clever way to experience an older game again, whether it's with the addition of new content, extra content, bug fixes, improved graphics. It's a thing we're seeing on Apple Arcade. We're seeing that on the PS5, on the new Xbox consoles as well. And I'm all in favor for it because I feel like there's so many older games that we still need to play. And having an improved version, it's something that I really like.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for the developers, too, I think, to go back and revisit a game once they know kind of what worked and what didn't necessarily, and maybe pick up some ideas that fell by the wayside in the development process the first time around and expand on the things that worked best in the original edition. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to see next week. I also reviewed this week, Federico, Transloader 3. Now, this is an app that's been around for quite some time. The first mention of it I found on MacStories was in 2012, which was another story by you.
I remember this. Yes. Back when I was a Mac user.
Right. This is nearly 10 years old now, at least on the MacStories timeline. And Transloader, what it allows you to do is use your iPhone or iPad to manage downloads on your Mac. And you may wonder, why would I want to do that? Because there is a downloads folder in iCloud Drive now that you can download things to from an iPhone or iPad. But Transloader does a lot more than that. I mean, it creates a history of all of those files that you've downloaded. It allows you to move them between Macs, not just from iOS to Macs. Having that list is a handy way to know where files are if you lose track of where you've downloaded them. You can also directly share them from there. re-download them, move them to another machine. Just super versatile in that sense, as well as the fact that there's a lot of automation built into the app now. Version 3 is really a ground-up redesign of this entire app, and the automation is a big part of that. There are 3 different shortcuts actions, exactly what you'd expect, which is the ability to download. There's an action for downloading files. There's also one for checking whether your Mac is available, because Transloader won't work. It has a Mac component app, but if your Mac is turned off, asleep, or Transloader isn't running, it's not going to work. What you can do, though, is, with shortcuts, you can wake a Mac remotely and then download a file that way with Transloader, which is something I've tried, and it works. And then there's another action, too, that lets you save a link for later. Maybe you don't know where you want to download it. Maybe you don't want to tie up your internet with a really big download or something at a particular time, and you want to save it for another time in the day. That's possible too. But then on the Mac side, the app has both link and file actions, which integrate with both apps. So you can have a downloaded file automatically open in a particular app, or automator workflows. So you can run an automator workflow to do things like move files around your system and that sort of thing. So there's a lot here, a lot that it can do. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. I spent a lot of time playing with it over the last week or so, and then put out the review this week. And I think people should check it out, because you may have heard about it before, but this is a very different app, I think, than what people might have recalled from several years ago. So worth revisiting if you haven't tried it in a while.
Yeah, it's and I love the integration with shortcuts and how that lets you. And I enjoy the example that you had in your review, how you can mix and match different utilities for the Mac that have iOS companion apps, such as you use the, what's it called, remote?
It's changed its name several times, which is a little confusing, but it's remote control for PC/Mac. And it's an app that can be used for doing things like controlling media on your Mac, whether it's Netflix or, you can do Netflix or various music streaming services, but it can also be used as like a trackpad or a mouse. It's got a lot of different tools. But one of the neat things is that almost every function in it, including a bunch of system functions like waking your Mac, putting your Mac to sleep, that sort of thing, can be tied to shortcut actions. So I use that app all the time to kind of initiate something on my Mac, because if my Mac's asleep, it's not going to run. So I usually use that, for instance, to wake up the Mac, and then use something like Transloader to drop the file on the Mac.
Right. All right, John, tell me about what's it called? The Kensington Studio Caddy. What is this thing?
This is a unique charging station and organizer for your Apple devices. Now, it will work with non-Apple devices, but they're very much marketing this to Apple users. It's a 2-piece thing, and the 2 pieces connect magnetically, although they don't have to be used together. The front piece has Qi chargers, a little pad for AirPods, and then a kind of vertical pad for an iPhone. And it's not MagSafe. It just leans there.
Okay.
And it only charges at 7.5 watts, which is a little disappointing. But you can put your phone and your AirPods there, and then it has a USB-C and USB-A plug on the end, which is important because the second piece is really just a hunk of metal. It doesn't have any electronics. It's a vertical filer for a MacBook and an iPad, or 2 iPads. You put them in these slots vertically, allowing you to store it in a smaller space. So that's why it's an organizer. It's a space-saving thing on your desk. And then you can connect cables from the USB-A and USB-C ports to those devices to charge them at the same time. So at any one time, you could have a Mac laptop, an iPad, an iPhone, and AirPods all charging at once. I suppose you could also even connect an Apple Watch charger in one of those side ports if you wanted to do that instead. But there's no like special watch place on this Caddy thing. So it's $180, which is kind of expensive. But a lot of these dual Qi chargers are kind of approaching that range in the $100 to $150 range. And this has the added benefit, I guess, of having, it being modular, having a nice design, and allowing you to charge up to 4 things at once.
All right, that's an interesting choice for an accessory. I'm not sure it's for me, but I can appreciate the I can appreciate the fact that it integrates all kinds of Apple devices, including the AirPods. So
right,
yeah.
I mean, it has the benefit if you're a laptop or an iPad user to have that built in. I think I prefer personally the Belkin 3-in-1 charger, which has a MagSafe iPhone charger, an Apple Watch charger, and an AirPods charger all built in one. It's very small, but it also only handles small devices. It's not working with with a Mac or with an iPad. But
Right.
I guess it depends on what you use.
Right. All right, let's switch to Club MacStories and see what we covered on MacStories Weekly this week. So, John, you had a collection of video game utilities, but not the usual, like it's not about games, it's not about the usual apps. How did you pick the apps in this collection?
It's really a collection of things that are not iOS or iPadOS games. So it's companion apps to console games, for instance, whether it's apps that you use with a Nintendo game, or I picked 3 Nintendo games because, come on, I mean, people know me. That's mostly what I play. So I picked 3 companion apps that are on iOS for Nintendo games. But I also dove into the streaming apps for Xbox and Google Stadia, as well as the local LAN streaming app that Sony makes for the PS4 and PS5. So those apps as well, and then some apps for organizing your game collection and what you want to play and that sort of thing. So it's all ancillary apps to a video game hobby addiction, I suppose. And so it's quite a few apps. It ended up being about 1,400 words on various gaming apps.
All right. And so we also had the second part of our extended developer interviews from the roundup that we did with various developers post WWDC, right?
Right. And so last week we did 3 of them in weekly, and this week we have another 4, the last 4. So it's a total of 7. These are the unabridged versions of these interviews, so you can get a complete idea of what everyone had to say in context, because for the story we had on the site, it was just too much material for one story, so we kind of skinnied it down for the website, but we've got everything in weekly for club members. And then I guess finally we had 2 other things. I had a tip about using Safari on Monterey and how to maybe make the tab situation a little better. I can't say that I solved the problem, but there are ways to deal with it that are better than just going with the default settings. So I had some tips there. And then you and I recorded an episode of MacStories Unplugged. What did we cover there, Federico?
We did. So we talked about my writing process for the iOS and iPadOS 15 review. So how I'm dealing with that massive project this week and this year, and how I feel like I'm in a much better spot compared to previous years when it comes to my workflow for organizing notes and having research material next to my review as I write. So go listen to that, because I think it's interesting to see how I've sort of learned from previous years and how I'm further optimizing my setup this time around. And in the second part of the show, we also talked about some sweet retro gaming and how
Right.
we are sort of our latest experiments and explorations into playing with old consoles. So I don't want to spoil this, but well, actually, I will spoil a tiny part of this with my pick, but go listen to that segment in Unplugged.
All right. And then this week, too, on App Stories, Federico, we had an interview with Marcos Tanaka, the maker of Music Harbor and Music Smart. And this is the first one-on-one interview in our Summer OS Preview series. We'll have another one in a couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for that. But it was a good discussion about what's going on with Music Kit and what Marcos is excited about for the fall. All right, Federico, the sponsor for this week's episode of MacStories Unwind is Hook. And Hook is a revolutionary app that lets you link items between your favorite Mac apps and instantly open them without searching. It's the ultimate contextual computing app that lets you instantly hot link and retrieve related information. Hook is a universal, consistent system for linking items even when an app doesn't offer a way to link things itself. You can link web pages, files, objects, tasks, calendar entries, email messages, and even sections of a PDF. Then paste those links anywhere so everything you need is always right at your fingertips with two-way bidirectional links. The app also makes it easy to copy markdown formatted versions of the links, reveal files in the Finder, and bookmark links too. To learn more about Hook, go to hookproductivity.com. We've got a special 30% off discount for Hook right now for a limited time, so check the show notes for that URL too, so you can get a great discount on this fantastic app. Our thanks to Hook for sponsoring Unwind this week. All right, Federico, let's do these Unwind picks. What have you got for me today?
All right, my pick for today is Metroid Zero Mission. So
nice.
If you listen to MacStories Unplugged, this pick will make more sense. But essentially, I wanted to play all the Metroid games again. And I wanted to start from the very first Metroid game. Now, Metroid 1, it's not a fun game to play these days. It's an NES game. It looks really old. But that first Metroid game was remade on the GBA in 2005, I want to say. Yeah, because Metroid Fusion...
That sounds about right.
...was from 2004. And yeah, from 2005. It's a beautiful GBA remake with 16-bit graphics. And I own the original game. I still have my GBA cartridge, and I have multiple GBA consoles. I also have a Nintendo DS that can play that game, and I started playing on the Nintendo DS because of because it's got a newer battery, and I really like the screen. But I've realized now that I'm 32, almost 33, my hands don't appreciate holding a small video game console, portable console, as much as they did when I was a teenager.
Oh, I felt this too recently playing Metroid Fusion. I was using one of those smaller old DSs, and it's not that easy to play on those.
Gets real crampy after a while. So I started the game again I was just a couple of hours into the game. It's fine. I started it again on the Wii U. I revived my old Wii U, and I can play via the Virtual Console. And the added benefit is that on the Wii U, because it's the Virtual Console, you can create custom save points. They're called restore points at any time during the game. So it's kind of like cheating, right? But also, I'm fine with it because older games were made with different sensibilities, with different lifestyles in mind. And Metroid has always been big about, you can only save at these specific save stations every so often in the game. And with the Virtual Console, creating a restore point at any time during the game, it is kind of like cheating, but also I'm older now. I ain't got the time, man. I just want to play a game. I want to finish the game, and so I'm gonna use the functionality. So Metroid Zero Mission. Any way you can play it, go play the game. Whether you want to emulate the game, or you have the original from the GBA, or you want to play on the Virtual Console for the Wii U, it's a fantastic game. It's the very first game in the Metroid timeline that tells the origin stories of Samus Aran and the Space Pirates and the Metroids. So go play that game. It's really good.
Yeah, it's a great game, and I need to play that one as well. I've been playing Fusion right now, and
Fusion is super good.
Yeah, and if you listen to MacStories Unwind, you'll hear a little bit more about some hardware that I recently purchased that's not coming for a while, but will let me do some of the same kind of save state type stuff that you're doing, but in a totally different context. So I'll leave it at that. My pick this week is Hurt is Boring, which is a new EP by Fan Club Wallet. Now, Fan Club Wallet is not a band that I had ever heard of. It's really just one person, and it's described in one of the reviews I read as scruffy indie pop, which really felt perfect. It's kind of a somewhat edgy punk version of indie pop that another review that I read, said it's a friendly and unpretentious mix of indie folk and pop sensibilities, which I think, if you know my music tastes, it kind of falls right into my sweet spot, I guess. I have definitely a very strong pop streak in me, as well as just liking alternative and indie bands a lot. And this is just a short album of, I think, 6 or 7 songs it's 5 songs, actually. And they're all great. I mean, it's got a really nice upbeat rhythm, but it's also got that very indie vibe to it. So a couple of the tracks that I like a lot, Car Crash in G Major is a really good song that I think has gotten something like nearly 3 million plays on Spotify. And then Come On, Be Cool, which is a really good song as well. So this is one, I think you'd like this one, Federico. You should check it out.
I gotta listen to this.
Yeah, it's a quick listen. These songs are range from 2 minutes to a grand total of 3 minutes, 15 seconds for Come On, Be Cool. So these are very much your kind of short, quick, fun pop songs, but great songs all around.
Okay. All
right, Federico. We've got another Friday in the can. This has been MacStories Unwind. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. And this episode was brought to you by Hook, a great Mac app that you should check out. Federico's over on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.